What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at Scarface, directed by Brian De Palma, written by Oliver Stone, starring Al Pacino. Scarface tells the story of Tony Montana and his rise to power in the world of drugs in the 1980s. Okay, that is the overall story of Scarface. Let's talk about it. This has become one of Al Pacino's most signature roles. This movie is also probably one of the most well-known and most infamous gangster movies to ingrate pop culture, and for good reason. Scarface is just one of those seminal gangster movies that once you watch it, the imagery is going to stay with you. So let's waste no time. Let's talk about it. How I feel about Scarface? I enjoy Scarface. I think this is an ultra-violent, stylized movie that is the definition of 1980s excess. I thought Brian De Palma, from a director's standpoint, did an absolutely fantastic job with this film. This movie has a beautiful, striking visual look. I like the grounded, gritty. Really, I like the grounded grittiness of it, and I also like its flashy, over-the-top, violent aspect this movie has as well. And when you compare it to, let's say, a movie like The Godfather, you can see a distinct difference in the way the two gangsters slash mobs do business. The Italians have a more traditional way of doing business, while what's depicted here, Cubans and the Spanish, they have a more vicious, violent, more in your face way of doing things. And I thought Brian De Palma did a good job at pretty much showing what happens when someone goes into the drug underworld. It's not going to be pretty, you're not going to have any friends, and the violence that they're going to do to you is going to be brutal, graphic, and you're going to be wishing you were dead. So from that standpoint, I like how Brian De Palma pretty much didn't like, wasn't too cheeky about saying it, wasn't too cheeky about it. Like, he wasn't afraid to show the dangers of what happens when someone goes into the drug underworld, because the good chance you're not going to make it out alive. So I liked all that stuff. From a casting standpoint, Al Pacino as Tony Montana is iconic. It's one of his more staple roles. He is a scene stealer. I love the over the top exaggeratedness he brings to Tony Montana. This was during the '80s when Pacino pretty much was having the second wave of his career, and this was the beginning of Pacino as the very loud, obnoxious type of person he would be in his movies, where would be constantly screaming all the time. Scarface is pretty much the beginning of that. But for this movie, it works. Like, Pacino was really good in this movie as Tony Montana. He could be both very, very funny, and he can both just be very haunting and just intimidating all at the same time. Particularly when it comes to stuff regarding his sister, Gina, that he has an unhealthy obsession with. I thought Pacino played the role perfectly. Stephen Bauer, who played the character of Manny, who's like pretty much Tony's right-hand man. I thought Stephen Bauer was fine in the role. He and Pacino have really decent on-screen chemistry. And Manny's tragedy is that he marries Gina and he dies for it because of Tony's obsession. But it's a good performance nonetheless. Speaking of Gina, the actress who played Gina, she did a really good job in the role as well. I thought her acting could be a little flat in some areas, but I thought her and Pacino come across as a brother and sister. And in the scenes they do share, I buy it. Michelle Pfeiffer plays Elvira, who is Tony's love interest. This was Michelle Pfeiffer's first movie, and for what she did, I thought she was fine in the role. She didn't really do a whole lot, but she held her own against heavyweight like Pacino, and got to give her all the credit in the world. This movie also boasts a strong supporting cast that includes Robert Loggia and F. Murray Abraham, and I thought they played the roles really, really well. Loggia plays this guy called Frank, who pretty much mentors Tony into the world of drugs, while Omar plays Frank's right-hand man, and Omar is also an FBI informant. When we learn this when Tony and Omar go to this character Sosa to try and do business with him. Sosa reveals that in the past Murray had ratted out another gang out to the cops. That's all that stuff is pretty good too. And I also like the fact that Omar and Tony, they don't really like one another either. Like, they have a disdain towards one another. But I do like the stuff with Tony and Frank, because you can see that Frank has an affinity for Tony. But but after the death of Omar and after Tony does business behind Frank's back, this is where Frank kind of double crosses Tony, and Tony gets onto it and turns the table, ends up killing Frank and taking over the empire for himself. And now Tony's at the top of the world. The world is his. And This is where Tony's character gets more interesting because now that he has everything, paranoia now starts to sit in on his empire. And this becomes really prevalent when he gets busted when trying to launder his money by the FBI in a sting operation. And it only gets intensified when he's supposed to do a hit on some sort of congressman, and it goes absolutely off the rails when the congressman's wife and children are start to get involved, and Tony's like, "No, I ain't gonna do that." But I also like that. That adds a certain element to Tony. Like he's not a like Tony Montana is not a good human being. He is a POS, but he does have his limits, and he ain't gonna kill an innocent wife, an innocent woman, and an innocent child just to kill some other guy. Like he has his way of doing about things, and I like that. In an aspect, he kind of turned Tony almost into an anti-hero in a type of way. And I actually thought Tony Oliver Stone did a good job at writing that, and I thought Al Pacino did a good job in his performance in the infamous car bomb scene, which is a great scene by the way, one of the best scenes in the whole movie. Aside from the climax at Tony's compound, which is a sheer bloodbath of awesomeness. If I were to have any complaints about Scarface, I think this movie does run a little too long. There are certain scenes that you could have chopped down just a little bit, maybe getting rid of some extra characters that you really didn't need. And this movie could have been trimmed by at least 20 minutes. It would have still had the same effect, and you would not have lost anything important. The action sequences, they're all really violent, ultra-violent, stylized, and they look great. The chainsaw scene in the bathroom is memorable and sticks with you. The shootout at the nightclub, memorable and it sticks with you. The entire third act, when Tony is pretty much one against the world, outstanding. And Pacino, at this point, is in full-blown cokehead rage, and it's a glorious sight to see this man just gun down and mow down everybody. It's fantastic. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on Scarface. I enjoyed this movie. I like it a lot. I'm gonna give it a solid. I'm gonna give this movie a solid 9 out of 10. Despite the runtime, which I think could have been chopped down a little bit, this is still a strong movie and it still holds up. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Scarface. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.